Now I've got a piece of fresh Ilford multi-contrast warm tone paper. We're going to slide in the easel. We're going to actually do the demonstration that I just showed. We're going to take a card and we're going to slide it right here. Green filter is above. We're going to go F8 at 12 seconds. Right now. So you can see the soft contrast is always the first exposure made, and as I say, we're exposing for 12 seconds. I'm going to leave the card right in place, and I'm going to drop this card on top, move this card away, and also going to change the filter to blue. Remember, the blue gel has 2 cuts in it so that I know for sure I'm putting the appropriate gel in there. I'm going to get in here and hold that piece of cardstock down nice and tight. And once again, F8 at 12 seconds. We'll bring it directly over into the developer. 2 minutes. And on into the fixer, and you should see a pretty dramatic example of the power of multi-contrast papers. One thing that I'll say quite often is never pick up a piece of paper in the developer tray with 3 fingers. Always use 2 fingers. What I mean by that is never pick up the paper with your thumb in between your index and middle finger. Always use the thumb and index finger so that you don't crease or crimp the paper. This obviously is more important, much more important with azo, which is a single weight paper, than it is quite as important with double weighted papers, but nevertheless it's a good habit to get into. Another little tip when you're in the developer tray, when you first go in, don't take the paper and push it down with your fingers to get it submerged. Let it submerge naturally. Sometimes when you push papers down, again, more so with the single weighted papers such as azo, you can dimple the paper and crack the surface. It's a shame to go through all, especially with azo, to go through all the dodging and burning that you might have done only to damage the print in the development process. It's very frustrating. So good habits to get into even if you're not using azo. So I'm not sure what you can see on the video, but you can begin to see quite a dramatic difference between one side that's just green light, soft contrast light, and the other side which is just blue, hard contrast light. Another interesting little phenomenon with Ilford's warm tone paper, it doesn't seem to happen with other Ilford products, but with the warm tone product, when it gets into the fixer tray, and this is not something you're probably going to be able to see, but when it does get into the fixer tray, for some reason the blacks intensify. And you know, I've talked to many other printers, and they all agree to some degree the blacks do intensify. And it's not a defect or a detriment or anything like that. I still believe Ilford warm tone paper is the finest enlarging paper out there. It's just a little caveat to the warm tone product. It does not happen with the cold tone product. So I like to take the print, before I put it on my white plexiglass viewing board, I like to wash at least much of the wet, heavy fixer off. Because remember, even though this is a test print, farther down the road there's going to be finished prints that are on this for me to evaluate. I just want to have as least amount of fixer transferred to the print. So I think what you'll see here is, you know, the right side has been exposed with nothing but green light, and the left side has been exposed with nothing but blue light. You can see that there's a dramatic difference in contrast. Both exposed identically for F8 at 12 seconds, and you can see what just the paper produces in a difference. And turn the white light on. So I know I've shown this particular example to many seasoned photographers that grew up with graded paper, and many of them are stunned to see this type of a contrast difference by nothing more than a change of filtration. And I think it's a good time to explain that multi-contrast papers, at least Ilford multi-contrast papers, are formulated with 3 emulsion layers. One emulsion layer is an equal amount of blue and green, that equal amount of emulsion that reacts to blue and green. There's another emulsion layer that is biased towards blue, and then the third emulsion layer is biased towards green. So Ilford has figured out, or multi-contrast paper manufacturers have figured out, there's a certain relationship between those 3 emulsions, and that is where the multi-contrast capabilities comes from. 3 separate emulsions crafted in a slightly different way. So I think this is a perfect example to show the power of the Ilford multi-contrast paper. And one of the reasons that we've done this live and in real time is because I've had a couple of students come in here and they've actually said to me, if I hadn't seen you make the prints that you made with your negatives, as flat as your negatives are, I would not have believed it. So I wanted to make sure that I did this in real time so that there was no mystery or question as to whether I maybe switched out a print or whether I manipulated the print beyond what you could see in the video. This is the power when you understand how to design your negatives so that they can take full advantage of multi-contrast papers. And when I say take full advantage, what I mean is traditionally held wisdom that you design negatives for a 1.25 or somewhere in that area to even 1.35. That technology and thinking has gone out the window. With multi-contrast papers, and we're going to learn in other segments why this happens, but there is so much potential for altering the contrast, not only within small little areas, but just altering the contrast itself by the contrast formula that you choose. And this is a perfect example. It may not seem very obvious now, but when you see something like this where you have that little contrast as compared to that much contrast within the same identical exposure, the same piece of paper, that should begin to open the door as to how powerful split contrast printing. Okay, so what you have here is you have this side of the print was exposed with the green or the soft contrast. F8, 12 seconds. Covered up the other side. Then I took the blue filter, put the blue filter in, and made an exposure here. Same identical exposure. So the only thing that was different here, it's the same negative, the enlarger height was the same exposure, the same, everything was the same. The only difference was the light source was changed from a green to a blue. This is the power of Ilford's multi-contrast paper. And in a broader sense, you should be able to begin to see the power of multi-contrast papers from well-designed negatives and what potential lies ahead for a skilled printer.